What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, November 7th, 2019. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We've got a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open. 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room. Hand hovering over that telephone, ready to put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. It is getting cold here in Indiana. In fact, they're predicting the first snow that will actually stick this coming weekend. So we'll see what happens on that. And gosh darn that human-caused global warming. What can I tell you? All right, let's get right on into it here. As you know, yesterday they had elections in several states. And already there are accusations of voter fraud, massive voter fraud. And one of the states where it's impacted is Kentucky, where the governor's race, the incumbent was defeated by a razor-thin margin. And under Kentucky law, that basically calls for a statewide recanvass, possibly a complete recount. And they're saying there were irregularities, which is a polite way of saying we caught somebody cheating on all of this stuff. And again, Trump had 3.5 years to fix this problem, and he didn't. Getting on back to Kentucky, apparently the race is so close. If the recount were to be just as close, then the race could be decided by the Kentucky State Legislature. We'll see what's going to happen over there. But the important takeaway from this is that already we're seeing allegations of massive voter fraud in the current election cycle. And again, one of Trump's great failings. He came into office saying he was going to fix this. And he had the authority to do it, and the state election commissions did not have the authority to refuse to cooperate. Trump backed down. Actually, he folded up like a cheap suit, is what happened over there. Now, over in Virginia, 4 prosecutors won their elections. All 4 were backed by George Soros, who threw a lot of money in there at the last second. So Soros is now trying to hijack the justice system along with our political system. And frankly, I resent this one guy just because he's got a lot of money coming on in and interfering with our elections. Forget the Russians, even forget the Israelis. Soros is messing around with our system. That shouldn't happen. Now, up in New York, the New York Police Department is upset over the passage of a ballot measure that gives a civilian oversight watchdog more authority to investigate police officers who lie during investigation into police brutality, corruption, and misconduct. And the NYPD's attitude is, well, the voters stabbed us in the back because they won't let us lie and kill with impunity. And we know that not just in New York, but all across this country, police brutality has become a major problem. You know, shooting dogs, tasering, beating up people who are not really resisting. There's that one lawsuit we talked about earlier in the week, where the police just roughed up this guy who was not resisting, not presenting a threat, was cooperating fully, and they still threw him on the ground and beat him up. And the police are saying, look, you have no right to expect the police to be nice to you, even if you're cooperating. That's the new attitude. It's real Nazi behavior. I'm sorry. It really is. Okay, a little bit of news from the campaign of Tulsi Gabbard. She just qualified for the November debate, and she's getting close to qualifying for the December debate. So those who wish Tulsi to go away, not going to happen anytime soon here. All right, we are hearing persistent rumors that Jeff Sessions will jump into the Alabama Senate race as of tomorrow. so it'll be Senator Sessions here. Getting on back to this sham impeachment, this whole thing continues to fall apart. It's imploding on itself. The Democrats' star witness has now admitted under oath the sole source of information for his claim that Trump wanted a quid pro quo to go after Biden was the New York Times. And I'm sorry, that's hardly a credible, authoritative source, given all the other things the New York Times has lied to us about here. And the FBI keeps changing their story about what happened to the Michael Flynn 302s. Now they're saying they misidentified the anti-Trump agent's notes in the case against Michael Flynn. And it looks to me like the FBI is looking for a graceful exit strategy, because my read is the judge is taking another look at this case, looking at the egregious prosecutorial conduct. He may just toss the whole thing. And I hope he does. At some point, this government has to make good to Michael Flynn. They won't do it. This government, first of all, will not admit that they did wrong. And second of all, they won't do any good about it. But Flynn's got grounds for all kinds of lawsuits here. Okay, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Okay. Michael Flynn's lawyer is now claiming that outed CIA FBI spy Stephen Halper was also a deep state source for the media's Spygate hoax stories. So if at first you don't succeed, lie again. They're recycling their liars. This guy got caught lying. What do? Well, let's bring him back and let him try and lie again, because he's really good at it. No, he's not. Nobody's believing him here. And over at CNN, there's a law enforcement analyst, James A. Gagliano, who has now gone public saying that he is physically nauseous over what happened to General Flynn and that he was dead wrong. And he had this comment, I think, really nails it. They have tarnished the badge, meaning the FBI, and forever stained an agency that deserved so much better from them. I am ashamed. The irreparable damage Comey's team has done to the FBI will take a generation to reverse. And he is correct up to a point, in that the FBI have been caught doing some other bad things long before now, which they've never atoned. And that would include yours truly and my treatment when I went public on the Vince Foster affair. Okay, we're going to take a phone call now from John in Tennessee. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, you had mentioned the thing about the New York City cops, and we have to have a national discussion because, Trump's out there beating the drum that, we need to just have all deference to cops whatsoever. But, aside from the unnecessary brutality and the other batteries and violence that happens at the hands of cops against innocent, unarmed people, out here in, I think it's Rock City, Tennessee, it's in Robertson County, we just had a police chief retire because he was told to make a ticket quota. And what he had done is he secretly recorded the mayor and the vice mayor, everybody can go look this up, where they're like, a very small city, and, like 6 squad cars or something, and the vice mayor and the mayor told him, okay, you can hire your 7th person, but you need to meet a ticket quota of 210 tickets a month. And, I've called you before and things like that. I'm very big on the Eddie Craig stuff. That the bottom line is, you live right next to a totally bankrupted state of Illinois. These police departments are running around generating revenue to pay their own salaries or whatever it is in these bankrupt municipalities because the governments are corrupt and they spend all the money. And if we've got cops running around just shaking people down for money, Eddie Craig is absolutely right. 90% of most of the police traffic stops are totally 100% unconstitutional. There's no articulable probable cause to pull somebody over because their car's in violation of the transportation code. And it's very hard to do, but you can do it. You can beat any ticket in court, but a lot of times you run up against a judge in a black robe and the whole thing is corrupt and he won't even listen to what you say. But if the cops want us to have a better attitude about them, and I know they live and work among us and they go grocery shopping and they put their kids in our public schools, I get all that. But I'm sorry, Mr. Officer, you better ask yourself, if you are pulling people over for violations of transportation code, you know, doing seatbelt checks and all your other garbage that you're doing, you better realize something. We don't like it. You can't just shake us down for money. And if that's what you're doing, you're no friend of the community. Just because your mayor and your city council and all these other people are corrupt. You know, I mean, you know this. Michigan, California, Illinois, all these states are bankrupt and they're in a race to the bottom. And Illinois is just one of the absolute worst. And I get it with cell phones and all that other stuff, but I mean, the fact that if they see you on your cell phone or whatever it is, they can just write you a $250 ticket, just pull you over and issue you. What's the difference between, well, and I get it, reading a text, reading an email. I know people can be really bad, but honestly, touching, you could stretch it to touching the dials on your radio, distracted driving. They could stretch it into anything. And like I said, it's getting really annoying that people are driving around and they're running around constantly looking out their window going, oh my God, is there a cop watching me or something?
Yes.
And, you know, what the thing in Rock City exposes, it exposes all the other cops that pull people over and do it for revenue generation. So, I mean, I just want to make that point. I care about the cops. I don't want us all turning against. We do need a police force. I get that, because in a lot of cities in America, if we didn't have a police force, it would be Beirut. I get that. But honestly, if you're in some little community that can't pay their bills and these cops want brand new SUVs to be evidence technicians and all this other crap, and they want all their toys, well, if you guys want those toys, then you better start issuing tickets to people. And, you're 8 miles over the speed limit, 7 miles over the speed limit, $112. Really? Sorry, Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mike. What's your opinion?
No, I didn't say anything just then. I mean, this constantly looking around to see if there's a police car actually makes for a much less safe driving environment. Now, the smart thing to do if you're living in a community like that is you use your car's cruise control to make sure you are at the speed limit. And that's what I tend to do. And fortunately here in Indiana, the traffic laws are actually very simple, easy to understand, and there's not a lot of police around here. I think the town of Santa Claus has a total of 4 squad cars. You hardly ever see them, though. Hardly ever see them. Right.
And what I've noticed since moving from Tennessee, because I did live up there in Illinois, and I was out there in DuPage County, and it was just constant harassment. I mean, they run your license plate. They're just sitting behind you in traffic, and they just run your license plate for fun, and which is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. They're not allowed to do that. They can't. There's got to be a crime. They've got to witness a crime. That's what they have to do. And if it's not a crime, the little light over your license plate is out, they pull you over. They pulled my daughter over for it, and then they pull that, oh, I think we smell marijuana. Let's get the dog. I mean, everything. They pull somebody over. Eddie Craig always says, you have a right to remain silent. They can and will use it against you. He's like, they can, and they will use it against you. Keep your mouth shut in a traffic stop, because a lot of them escalate it, and they want to go on a fishing expedition. And if you cop an attitude, they'll just make you get out of the car, and they'll call the dog, and they'll push it as far as they can. But anyway, it's just, like I said, in Tennessee, I don't think the cops, it could be a southern thing. They don't do that down here. I see plenty of cops, but they're not sitting here peering in everybody's window looking for an opportunity to pull somebody over. And Tennessee's probably one of the states, like some of the other ones in the South, that aren't beholden to all kinds of federal dollars. I remember in South Carolina, the governor, Mark Sanford?
Yeah.
South Carolina at the time, they weren't beholden to a bunch of federal dollars. They didn't want federal money because they knew there was always strings attached. And he was one of the guys who didn't want their money, and they found a scandal and they ran him out of office. I'm sure he was a little immoral, but not any worse than anybody else. But this government likes to get their hooks in everybody. You know what I mean? It's a top-down thing. And when they you're a new cop, maybe you're fresh out of the military, maybe you were over in the Middle East, you saw some stuff, I feel bad for you. But, man, if they give you a badge and a gun and they tell you to go out in the community and just start shaking people down for money, some of these young guys, 26, 27 years old, they have no conscience. And they just do it because they think they have to do it. And then people in the community are like, look, we're all struggling to get by. Like you and I say, the unemployment numbers are double-digit. Don't give me this 3.5% crap. And you guys are just running around just harassing people, trying to shake them out for $100. I don't have $100. You know? So, you know, it's like I said, it's a national conversation we have to have. And I think the cops are invited. I mean, they're very much invited to the table because they're having babies too, and they're trying to achieve the American dream and have a nice home. But honestly, if you're a cop and your job is to go out there and shake people down for money, you're not going to be liked in your community at all.
No.
Sorry. So,
well,
all right,
you know,
my friend. Well, thank you for oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the first area of abuse, of course, was civil forfeiture, which was originally passed to strip, you know, I mean, real criminals like drug dealers of the wealth their criminality had generated. And then the police, whose budgets were being cut so that the government could fund the wars and everything, they just turned it into another revenue generation system. And they're used to it now. They think this is the way it's supposed to be. And for those of us who've been the victims of this kind of behavior, we're saying, no, this is not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be out there getting the robbers and the muggers and the rapists and so forth, and, you know, not harassing law-abiding citizens.
Right, and again, and you know, there's hundreds of these stories out there where the cop does the traffic stop. Here's a guy who's got $3,000 cash on him because he's going to make a real estate transaction or buy a car.
Yeah.
They're like, what the hell are you doing with this amount of money on you? And then they just take it, and then it disappears. And then the cop probably feels bad, going, oh my God. Well, it's above his head. It's the people over his head and the judge and the county commissioner and the other people that are holding on to this guy's $3,000 for 6 months or 8 months. Not the cop. The cop just, quote unquote, did his job, but you look like a jerk when you do. Why are you taking the money? It's a legitimate, I'm going to a car dealership. We don't know about that. Really? Gosh, you know, it's suspicious to us, so we're just going to, you're going to stretch the Constitution and take my personal property because you suspect something. I see, again, like I said, I'm all for it. Bring the cops to the table. Let's have a national discussion because we've all said it. The people in the alphabet soup agencies and the cops, they're going to have to push back against their bosses because we're losing this republic.
Yes,
because
we are.
They're being told from the top. They're being told from the top, you go out there and treat everybody like they're a criminal. And it's like, that's not how America works. Not at all.
No, it isn't. I mean, I don't recognize this place, you know, compared to what it was when I was younger, and, you know, the police were a benefit for the community. And yes, there were crooked politicians even back then, but it is just spun so wildly out of control. I'm in agreement with you. We're losing our republic. We've already lost our republic. You know, we're living under, we're being treated again the way the Israelis treat the Palestinians, or the way the Nazis treated everybody else around them. And it's very unpleasant to deal with.
And I know you're going to run into those cops in Santa Claus somewhere at a coffee shop or a restaurant or whatever. And I know you're going to drum up a conversation with them like you did in Hawaii. And you're just, hey, what do you think about what's going on out there? Because they can have opinions about Buttigieg and whatever's going on in South Bend and other things like that. And we're going to find out a lot of these cops are just trying to make a living, and they don't recognize this country anymore either. But if there's a brotherhood there, you know, those guys can get on message boards and tell other cops, man, hey, don't do it. Don't step over the line. Don't violate your fellow citizens.
All right, John, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And once again, if you would like to support Republic Broadcasting, and we need your help, postal address to send a donation is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. If you'd like to make a donation by credit card or debit card, the phone number is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. Now, Claire and I have been very, very lucky. Where we lived on Oahu, the cops were very nice. They were very polite. We had only one unpleasant incident in all the years that we lived there, and that was a cop that had transferred from the mainland, shot a native Hawaiian who was praying over a wounded dolphin on the beach. And Hawaii's got very strict laws about not touching marine mammals, which this guy wasn't doing, but the cop shot him anyway. Here in our part of Indiana, it's very quiet. In fact, this morning was the first time we heard a siren, which turned out to be an ambulance, not a police car. But Indiana has its rough parts too. Over on Evansville, especially the west side, a lot of drug dealing, a lot of homelessness, apparently a big meth problem over there. But fortunately, where Claire and I are, it's very, very quiet. And as I mentioned the other day, you know, you look out this window, you look at all the birds and everything, and you say, it's hard to believe there is such evil going on in the world as we see. But we know it's there, and we're going to have to deal with it. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. With regards to the guy who called in from Tennessee, and I know you know about this, and maybe a lot of the listeners do, but back in 2016, John Oliver, and Google John Oliver, civil asset forfeiture, did a whole show, and there's a 16-minute clip, and if you're going to learn about it, you may as well laugh while you're doing it. But they go over the civil asset forfeiture. Is that
the one with the margarita machine?
Yes, yeah. That's exactly the one. And 16 minutes and 30 seconds long, and they talk about, and they refer to a Washington Post story, which was done in 2014, I believe, which said, and they researched it and said that at the police at all levels, from the feds to the state police to the local and municipal guys, that they actually took more money in 2014 or whatever this was from the American people than all the muggers and robbers and burglars in the whole country put together.
Yes.
And the title of the Washington Post series was "Policing for Profit," and in that slush thing with the margarita machine, right? That they interview like chiefs of police are saying, yeah, we like to do it for little goodies that we want to get, and there's no crime there. They're just taking things from the population. They don't seem to see anything wrong with that. And your other caller from Tennessee was right in that, like, I live in a broke municipality in a broke state. By the way, our country's broke too.
Yes.
So at all levels, we can't expect this to be going away. This will be increasing. So, you know.
Well, when I first saw the story about the margarita machine, the question that went through my mind is, are these police officers drinking on the job?
Yeah, I think I'd rather have them go to Dunkin' Donuts, but
Yes.
I'd rather have fat than drunk.
Yes, Krispy Kreme. Krispy Kreme. Fetch the Krispy Kreme.
And Mike, when you put it together with the fact that we know at the federal level that the American government are the biggest drug smugglers, and what the CIA does in selling drugs, selling opium in Vietnam, in the chests of dead GIs and cocaine from the Iran-Contra, and on and on and on and on and on. This is the enforcement agencies, even the military, but primarily the secret police and the at all levels. They turn that stuff on the American public all the time.
Yes.
For making money. It seems to be what they do.
No, our entire government has become one gigantic criminal enterprise. Our country is being run by organized crime.
And Mike, I'd be willing to bet you that in order to raise black money, that the intelligence agencies will sell, intercepted stuff from companies or people that they want. Like when Epstein and what's his name, Harvey Weinstein, right?
Yes.
Use those ex-Mossad guys, right, to ferret everybody out and stick them on it. And all those guys, including our own contractors, do the same thing.
All right. Well, listen, Peter, I'm going to have to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Chance in West Virginia. Aloha, Chance. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Mike. Your first caller had the right idea, but they would never let that happen. It makes too much sense, and we live in a nonsensical country now. We've got to come to the realization that we now live in an occupied territory, and law enforcement, unfortunately, a large number of them have become the occupied forces.
Yes.
I would never again call the law, no matter what the emergency is. Let's say an intruder on my property. I might call the county coroner's office to come pick up the cadaver or corpse, but I will never call the law. I just won't do it because what's happening now, I feel my life would be in just as much danger if they should show up as if the criminal showed up.
That's a very real concern, but you need to understand there are circumstances in which you are required to call law enforcement. And I say that because when we were living on Oahu, Claire and I had to go through this training program to be licensed to carry pepper spray. And one of the things they kept saying is, if you are attacked and you use the pepper spray to ward off the attacker, immediately call the police so that the attacker doesn't call the police and claim you assaulted them without reason.
I couldn't care less about that. My life is important. Nobody's going to care about my life but myself, Michael. Let's face it. When I'm dead, if I'm dead or murdered, all they're going to do is file a report. That's going to be of no comfort to my family and loved ones. No, my life comes first. I don't care about that law. I will not follow that law.
All right. Well, we did get our license for the pepper spray.
Okay, Mike. Goodbye now.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Francis in Montreal. Aloha, Francis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I wanted to talk about al-Baghdadi, but before I do, just want to comment on the previous callers. Someone said that the police are probably drunk, and I don't know if they're drunk, but in a lot of police departments and sheriff's offices and stuff across North America, if it's not actually encouraged, it's approved of for policemen to be on anabolic steroids because they like having big heavies who can handle, street fights and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's obvious, right? You can spot steroid users at a glance. Even old grandmas now know that, a guy's on steroids, right? And it's worth noting that anabolic steroids are on the same restricted schedule as heroin. So by being on steroids, they're lawbreakers themselves.
Yes.
Okay?
Well, the other aspect of it is that the police as a whole are much higher per capita consumers of prescription antidepressants, which basically remove inhibition. They lead to outbursts of violence. And it's something like 1 out of every 4 officers are on these medications, and they don't understand the adverse reactions that can happen.
Well, if you're on antidepressants, you're getting them by a prescription and from a doctor, and so that indicates that you're mentally ill. So that means we've got mentally ill people that are policemen.
Well, people who are marked as depressed and given antidepressant prescriptions, they're not classified as mentally ill because depression, to a light degree is not considered a mental illness. But the thing is that the antidepressants themselves make the police more mentally unstable.
Yeah. So anyway, to get to the point of my call, I was reading a very interesting article on the assassination of al-Baghdadi.
Yeah.
And as everyone knows by now, thanks to Webster Tarpley mainly, there's all these photographs on the internet of al-Baghdadi meeting with Senator McCain when he visited Turkey a few years ago.
Yep.
And everyone's seen, there's numerous photos, and also we all know that he's a Mossad agent and that he lives with his ugly wife in an apartment in Tel Aviv. He's Israeli. He's Israeli asset. So anyway, as to I had to say, I was disgusted even with Trump for promulgating this absurd wag the tail story of of the assassination of Baghdadi and the heroic dog and all this. Well, at the end of this one article on the assassination of the Caliph, it finishes off and he says, President Donald Trump thanked Russia, Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and the Syrian Kurds for their assistance in capturing and killing al-Baghdadi. For the moment, we do not know what the role of all these allies would have been, but we do take note of the fact that
Russia's already come back and said we had nothing to do with this. We were not informed. We did not grant our permission, and we were not involved.
Also, the commander of with the radar system, since they brought in the S-300s, the whole country is covered with meticulous radar coverage. The Russians know everything that's going on in the air. And the commander of the Russian forces in Syria said that his radar had not observed any helicopter squad activity in that region, neither on Saturday nor on any other days of the week. He further stated he did not know why he was being thanked. So the whole thing is just theatrical, absurd fraud for consumption by, the morons that watch CNN.
Well, I mean, even without the radar data or absence thereof from Russia, airstrikes make a lot of noise, and nobody reported hearing anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just outrageous. Like we're in 1984 world. The government's just outrageously lying every day. Who knows what's going on in the world? It's like all the shills are out on the internet, preaching lies. When anyone stands up on a bulletin board and tries to say the truth, all of a sudden there's all these share blue people who are piling on them and telling them that it's all been debunked and that it's a conspiracy theory.
Well, times are hard, and it's either be an online shill or work at the fast food restaurant.
I guess. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Mike. Have a good day.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And getting on back to our domestic news, this story caught me a little bit by surprise. As you know, there's been this ongoing debate where the impeachment witch hunt, if you will, is sending subpoenas over to the White House, and the White House is saying, no, we're not going to honor them. And the Department of Justice waded on into the debate saying that these subpoenas are illegitimate because these Trump administration witnesses are being denied the presence of an attorney. So along with the Constitution, Adam Schiff is throwing the Miranda ruling in the trash, where you have a right to an attorney to be present for all questioning. And he's saying, no, we don't need that. We'll just get them in here and we'll grill them until we get what we need to move forward with this impeachment. Meanwhile, a former Ukrainian official is saying that Hunter Biden took off the books payments from Burisma totaling millions of dollars. And I notice nobody seems to want to talk to him and Joe about that little bit of Ukrainian corruption that was going on here. Okay, Robert Steele, Leonard Posner are attempting to delete or otherwise make invisible all posts critical of the flawed legal finding in the Sandy Hook case. Now, as you know, we had Jim Fetzer on the air, I think it was about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, basically talking about this ridiculous kangaroo trial where the trial itself was conducted without the benefit of a jury, and Fetzer was not allowed to present any evidence whatsoever to bolster his claim that there was some kind of a hoax at Sandy Hook. And the judge was just up there in that kangaroo court and said, you're guilty. You defamed poor Leonard Posner. Then they brought in the jury. And again, Fetzer was not allowed to mount a defense to the jury and saying, look, I'm being railroaded here. And he's been hit with a $450,000 fine, which he's appealing. But right now, I'm smelling panic in the federal government. There are too many of these hoaxes they've perpetrated that are just hanging by a thread, whether it's Sandy Hook, the Boston Marathon bombing, 9/11 itself. And of course, the first time any one of these is exposed as a hoax, the rest are going to come crashing down. And I think that's why they are so terrified about what's going on right now and why they're working so hard to try and take control of the independent media and the independent internet. I want to go back to that wonderful world of the first Cold War where they could lie to the public with impunity. Well, I'm a member of the public, and I don't appreciate being lied to. And I'm going to speak truth to the power as long as I possibly can, until something does snap. It all starts crashing down. A lot of people are still talking about this recent Project Veritas video, which featured an anchor over at ABC, who apparently now may lose her job. And they're saying that, CBS also had this information. And CBS suppressed it, the same as ABC, because, yes, had this come out in 2016, it would have hurt Hillary Clinton's chances. So CBS basically sided with a pedophile against the pedophile's victims. About a tarnished badge over there. All right. Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark, is saying that Epstein might have been murdered, saying that there were unexplained cuts on Jeffrey's body, and says the Department of Justice is still refusing to turn over the medical file. So again, more signs of a cover-up. I still think Jeff is alive. I think who was killed in that jail cell and wheeled out was somebody who looked a lot like him. How do you get rid of somebody like Jeffrey Epstein, who's going to have a dozen dead man switches scattered all over the globe? That is, you help him fake his own death, you get him on out of there, you let him go where he wants to live, and everybody goes home happy. The big question I have is, who is now in possession of all of that data that Epstein collected over the last, 20 years now? Because whoever has that information now has as much political clout as Epstein himself. Turning to the international news, Syria is now starting to make noises about how they are the rightful owners of these oil fields. And the Syrian army is now working to take back control of some of these oil fields, leading to the possibility of an armed conflict with the United States, which the U.S. would love to have happen. They don't want to leave Syria. It would be seen as a defeat. They just need an excuse where they can go to the American people and say, look what those gosh darn Syrians have done to our boys and girls in uniform, and we have to give them what for. All right, we're going to take another phone call here. Chris in Clearwater, Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Michael, did you cover yet the cops who don't like the idea of Google Maps posting the speed traps?
Can you run that one by me one more time?
Well, they don't like the idea that Google Maps would warn people of speed traps.
Oh, yes,
I know
there have been many apps where people are warning of speed traps and so forth, just like in the days of Citizens Band Radio, where when you'd pass a speed trap and you just get on Channel 9 and say, be aware, there's a speed trap at mile marker whatever on Highway whatever. And just like there are police who do not like anti-police radar units in the cars that will detect radar or laser and sound a warning.
Well, then, like what you mentioned, other apps like Waze, W-A-Z-E, has had that for quite some time.
Yes.
For the audience, know that you can go, if Google drops that feature, then you can just go use Waze, W-A-Z-E. But doesn't that show that it's not about getting people to slow down? Because you'd think that there would be some false alarms about speed traps, so that would get more people to slow down than otherwise would. It's all about revenue generation, folks.
Yep.
That's all they care about. They don't, care about you spotting them. So, anyway, getting on to Epstein, though, this reporter, Amy Robach, that undercover video, and the person who came in contact with the footage of the apparent leaker was fired. I got news that just saw the news today. But, wouldn't that make ABC also an accessory, and Amy Robach, the reporter, by her own admission, an accessory to the crimes of Epstein both before and after, despite Epstein's inability to defend himself, apparently, because I do think he's likely alive still by the preponderance of the evidence. ABC ought to be investigated for these crimes, regardless of Epstein's inability to defend himself. The preponderance of the evidence shows that ABC should be investigated. And I think the reporter Amy Robach ought to be given immunity for that video that has come out. But there are other news outlets who have had that information that Amy Robach reported on. Jason Burmis over on a YouTube channel, the Info Warrior is his YouTube channel, but you remember, I'm sure you know Jason Burmis as one of the guys who produced, one of the three producers of Loose Change 1 and 2 on 9/11. So he's recently come out about explaining how this information that ABC had was also reported on by the Daily Mail and others that they've had. But that would make all these other news outlets that have been given this information accessories as well. So that they all need to be investigated criminally. But if Amy Robach were given immunity, that would I think bring a great public cry to the investigation for all these, not just ABC, but the other news outlets.
Well, the ABC and the other news outlets have taken the position that they could not corroborate the allegations, and so they felt they could not publish that. But as I pointed out the other day, they went to press with Saddam's nukes and Assad's sarin gas and Donald Trump dealings with Russia without any corroboration whatsoever. So it's hypocritical. Anyway, Chris, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Got another caller waiting on the line. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go right back to the phones to Jim in Brooklyn. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Yeah. Usually I think your fellow broadcaster there, Kelso, is just a little bit too much of a cheerleader for Trump, even though I like Trump and voted for him and will vote for him again. But last night he was so right on. He said many things that I've been thinking about. Basically, regard to Mexico. Mexico is a total failed state.
Yes.
Things that happen there are worse than what ISIS does. You have these descendants of Incas who are disemboweling people, cutting out their hearts. Well, just like the Incas cut out the 12-year-old girls, they cut their hearts out while they were alive. Bodies are being found dissolved in chemicals in 55-gallon drums in the southern part of Mexico. It took 9 hours for the authorities to show up at the shooting. They claimed that the shooting was crossfire at first or mistaken identity. It was an it was a direct conscious hit on that family. We are in the Middle East. What do we have to do with that? And you know that I'm basically, in many ways, pro-Israel, but Israel doesn't need us, and nobody else there needs us. Our people should be there, and we should not build a wall. A wall is what you would call reactive. Mexico should be occupied from top to bottom. It's failed government, and their authorities are ineffective. So much bad things are happening there, and from there, it is unbelievable. It should be our only place to concentrate on.
Well, what you need to understand is that Mexico's government is riddled with drug crime, and so is ours. And that's why our government is buddy-buddy with the government of Mexico and is not going to challenge the status quo. Think back to Fast and Furious, where the U.S. government, at taxpayer expense, sent to the Mexican drug cartels the exact same sort of weapons they insist you, the American people, could never possibly use. I mean, that tells you right there what's going on.
Yeah, and then another thing about this but it affects us so much here. Besides that, you heard about these MX-13s up there on Long Island. They're all over the place. And I live in a neighborhood where we have these little grocery stores on the corners, and they're all manned by these people. It's like an invading, and when they go to work, they go to the same restaurants and bars or whatever it is, and it's like one big invading army that spreads out throughout my neighborhood. And some of them know that I come from Trump. You know, I get things like when they see me coming and they put damaged cans with the products they know I like. It's unbelievable what's going on.
Yeah, it's the death of the United States. You know, we're losing our republic. Yeah. We're being absorbed by the Borg, or by the Soros in this case, as part of his grand global collective.
And I want to tell you one more thing. I don't know if you're aware of this, what's happening here in New York. As of January 1st, this no bail thing, you heard about no bail in New York City? About 90% of the crimes will have no bail and the desk appears released to walk around. And aside from that, did you hear they're closing Rikers Island?
Yes, I heard that.
Rikers Island is being closed down. They're taking those people and they're fanning them out into 5 different boroughs, into sometimes residential neighborhoods. They can have buildings like 29 stories high.
Jim, I'm sorry. I got to let you go. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. Okay. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And over at Blacklisted News, they have this headline story: Trump okays wider Syria oil mission, raising legal questions. Now, that really is hilarious because what Trump has already done is illegal under the UN Charter, under international law. He's just saying, well, you know, in for a penny, in for a pound. The U.S. has started constructing 2 new bases in Syria's oil-rich region. Now, this is prompting a response from Russia, which is starting to set up their own military bases across northeastern Syria. So we're looking at a situation where we could actually get into a shooting war with Russia over this Syrian oil. And I think that's a bad idea. Now, apparently, somebody did a major whoopsie, and Syria was able to get their hands on an intact David Sling missile. They have now turned over to the Russians to reverse engineer that technology. And of course, the US and Israel are demanding the return of that missile. It's not going to happen. Same thing when Iran hacked that drone and brought it down. You know, finders keepers, losers weepers. Over in Nablus, Israeli illegal settlers basically stole an entire olive harvest belonging to Palestinian farmers in the village of Al-Luban al-Sharqiya to the south of the northern West Bank, and apparently with something like 900 trees worth of olives. That's a lot of olives. And they just went on in and just took it. So I would be very careful about buying olives that say product of Israel right now. Now, despite congressional outrage over the continuing U.S. involvement in Yemen, somebody got some video footage, obviously clandestine, from the odd angle of the smartphone, but showing Oshkosh armored vehicles being unloaded at the port of Aden. These are American-made. They're being used by the Saudis. So that war is continuing. You're not supposed to know about it, of course. All right, we saw this all the way back in the run-up to the war in Iraq, where one of the IAEA experts, inspectors, whatever, was obviously compromised, and they were caught trying to plant a sample of highly enriched uranium in Iraq's power station support facilities. Well, it's happened again, this time in Iran. Now, obviously, the access to Iran's nuclear facilities have all kinds of alarms and detectors and so forth. And this IAEA monitor, she went on through the detectors, they lit up, said she's carrying something. She refused to search, which is required under the P5+1 deal. And she has now resigned her post and left Iran. So, yeah, they're trying to build a case against Iran by saying, oh, look, we found this microscopic particle of highly enriched uranium. Gee, where could that have come from? Over in Iraq, over a dozen protesters have been shot dead in the last 48 hours. It's gotten so bad, the Iraqi military has now banned the use of live ammo. Killing the people of Iraq is not going over very well with the people of Iraq. Up in Germany, Angela Merkel is dealing with basically a mutiny among her own ministers. She's tried to preserve her ruling coalition for the remainder of what is going to be her last term in office. But apparently this has to do with this new plan for European banking, which once again drops the bulk of supporting the EU onto the German people. And they're not happy about that at all. Okay. Former U.S. diplomat Dennis Orsblad has called on Washington to reconsider their policy on Crimea and Russia and to reconsider the sanctions. And he makes a very good point, saying we need to deal with the world as it is today, not with how we wish it would be. It's time to stop the sanctions and allow the tensions to go down. That would be a smart thing to do, which is why it's not going to happen. Sorry, but it's not. Somebody did a survey over in Korea, and they found, and this surprised probably a lot of people, if North Korea and Japan were to go to war, the South Koreans would side with North Korea. They would support Kim Jong-un against Japan. So, politics notwithstanding, the reality is that the enmity between the Japanese and the Koreans goes back a very, very long way. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Let's talk about the economic news here. Global debt has hit an all-time high of $188 trillion. That's more than double the world's economic output. How did we get here? Very simply, private central banking, which by design creates more debt than money with which to pay that debt. People who set this whole system up, they didn't care. They knew that somewhere down the road there'd be a huge crash, but they'd be long gone. They'd be in their graves after a lifetime of wealth and comfort and privilege. That is a defining feature of our banking class, our political class, our top management class. They just don't care. They want what they want. They think that's a force of nature. And they just are oblivious to the harm they're causing. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I was reading about Bill Gates and how he's all upset about Elizabeth Warren's Medicare-for-all and how she says that he's going to have to pay billions more. Mm-hmm. And I just, I monitor other websites and stuff, and it's funny how the alt-right and the populists and the Republicans, they all kind of go to the defense of these same billionaires that really all they do is support, causes that are against the alt-right and the populists and the Republicans, and yet they defend them when, the Democrats and the lefties want to start taxing them. I've come to the conclusion that these billionaires, they never give money to causes like ours. You don't see them out talking about 9/11 or any of the, hot issues. They sit around, they promote degeneracy, queer this, queer that, anti-family, anti-Christian, climate change, abortion, and now they're all out with funding all these huge depopulation things, which is Bill Gates' family was big into that. Yes. He's out there inventing mosquitoes to give people inoculations. You know what that means, right?
Yes.
So, I think it's time that we stop being nice to these billionaires. The billionaires are the enemy class. I mean, let's face it. They hate the middle class whites. They hate people like you and me, Mike. They do. Their policies are always against us. So why should we care? I hope Elizabeth Warren or even Donald Trump takes every dime, maybe give them a couple $100 million, of Bill Gates' money, and that goes for Warren Buffett and all of them. I'm tired of them. I mean, we go around, the right and the Republicans and the Trumpers, all of them, go around like these billionaires. I give them credit. It's nice that they invented good things and, and tools and, stuff like that. Henry Ford and all those guys, they did, invent great things and all that. But then they turn around and they use their money for destructive purposes. I mean, yes. This whole climate thing is funded by billionaires, because they figure they're going to get a piece of that. All the solar projects that government funds, they're all billionaires raking in tons of money. I think it was the Rockefellers that figured it out when they built actually the World Trade Center, that they could get the government to build buildings for them with government money. And that's when the billionaire class really used government instead of being like, Ayn Randian, capitalists turned into socialists. So our billionaire class now aren't capitalists really. They're socialist fascist billionaires. And personally, but I don't want to put them in prison like the left does. I don't want to eat them like the left does. But I do think that they should start behaving themselves because they're making a lot of enemies, Yes. And, and personally, I'd like to see people maybe hit them in the head with a brick or something once in a while, just to let them understand that when you're out there and you're telling and funding depopulation and abortion and anti-white things, and anti-Christian things, and your media is radicalizing people, Antifa and Muslims against us, there might be a reaction back. And I think part of the problem with our side is we're too nice. And
yes.
And when I say this, one of the issues is, and we don't really look at it's kind of like the climate change. Why don't we join with the left on climate change? And when I say this, I say, all right, left, will you agree that they should do something about pollution that's causing climate change? Yes. That way we can get common ground pollution. We want to ban all private airplanes, okay? Now, that's a great divisive issue because it doesn't really divide our side, but it does divide the rich elitist from the left, the normal leftists who would probably say, yeah, why should these rich people be allowed to fly around in private airplanes and create all this high carbon, and then start putting up like most wanted posters, like wanted dead or alive. All these people, because they use so much carbon, right? They're carbon criminals. So you're a carbon criminal if you use a lot of carbon. Now, who uses a lot of carbon? Billionaires with their mansions and their yachts and their private airplanes. So what I'm saying is, instead of the right just sitting back and letting these lefties, run around and being funded by billionaires, right? We should kind of try to split that group. Tell the lefties on the bottom, the populist lefties, hey, why are you letting these billionaires fly around in their airplanes? Isn't that creating just so you let them buy a carbon offset and then that's okay? So I think that, it's an example, just one example of why the right loses is because we're too nice. And we don't play the game rough like they do. And you had a caller the other day talking about fascism and socialism, and I was thinking about it, and really fascism and the great fascists of our history, like Franco and Pinochet, and even Hitler, they were all like reactions to the communists and the socialists. I mean, they didn't just pop up out of nowhere. So it's like the communist, socialists, globalists, they come in and they want to like sow chaos and destroy the family and destroy religion. And it's that provocation. It's, people talk about fascism and socialism as an economic fight. I don't. I look at it as a cultural fight. I look at like what happened in Spain with the communists, and they tried to destroy the family, the institutions, the church, and Franco was a reaction to that. It was not really economic. And the same thing really happened in Germany. I mean, you had the communists in Germany, and then they had degeneracy. I mean, if you look at what Germany was like in the 1920s, after the war, it was like incredible degeneracy, what happened in Germany, and Hitler was a reaction to that. And you just had the same thing in Chile with the communists there, and anywhere you see the left, it's like, look at the left in our country. What do they promote? Transsexuals, degeneracy, at all different levels, however you want to look at it. So, it's not really. I think the war against the left, the Republicans make a mistake if they think it's just about capitalism versus socialism. To me, it's more about the cultural issues than it is about that. Because I have nothing in common with the billionaire capitalist who isn't really a capitalist. The billionaire capitalist maybe might have been a capitalist 100 years ago, but most billionaires today aren't capitalists. They're government socialists, and they made their money through government. Through government socialized, free-fed printing of money and low interest rates and friends contracts to build solar plants and all that kind of stuff. So, I'd say probably half or more of the billionaire class aren't guys that invented a widget. They're guys that got in on the government tit, or government corruption. So I think it's time that the right, so we sit back as righties, and we're all nice to the billionaires. They don't see any threat to them from the right. So they think the threat's from the left, so they appease the left. They fund the left. They give them cookies. They give them platforms. And my message is that the right has to start attacking the rich in this country. The guys like Bill Gates, the guys, I would like, if Elizabeth Warren got elected, I hope she puts him in the poorhouse for all I care, for what he's done to us. So the rich better realize they're making a lot of enemies on the right. I mean, serious enemies, for what they've done. And they're responsible for this. When you see like transsexuals winning all the women's sports awards and stuff, that doesn't just spring out of nowhere. That kind of stuff doesn't happen unless it's being done on purpose. So I was listening to Rush Limbaugh today, and he didn't really say too much defending Bill Gates, but he kind of gives the same saw about like, the rich, they do this, but he doesn't really get the fact that they were behind this, that they fund the left. The left is their creation, and yet the right doesn't really, allows it. Because I guess we're not threatening enough to the rich and the elite in this country, and I think that's got to change. And I think that basically, if Trump doesn't turn this thing around, there's going to be a period of lawlessness in this country. And I think the rich be better off going to like New Zealand and places once the balloon goes up, because You know, I think they're going to have the right and the left after them, in a perfect world, that is, because the left will be after them anyway, and the right will be after them when they make the connections that who's behind this, all this stuff that's been going on, the destruction of America. Who's behind it?
Well, it's definitely the banking class, and it's definitely the politicians who are willing to take the money from the banking class. We're in a stage of America's history where everybody is just out to grab as much money as they can before it all comes apart. And we're seeing some egregious business practices as a result, a complete disregard for consumer rights and consumer safety. But I do want to urge a word of caution, okay? Not every billionaire is a bad person. And I personally would like to be rich. I'll be very honest about that. But there are certain things I will not do to get there. I admire people like James Cameron or George Lucas or Stephen Jobs, who became very rich by producing a product or service or an entertainment that we voluntarily trade our money to partake of. The billionaires that are causing all the problems are the ones who game the system, just bring untold wealth to themselves without returning anything substantive to our society for it.
Well, I agree with you that there are, you know, a lot of billionaires that did a lot of like good things industrially or provided like great movies and things like that. But it's when they cross the line into politics and when they use their foundations for like basically they magnify like all of us people in a democracy have a power. You know, we have our vote, we have our voice, and because they can use when they use their money to magnify their voice so greatly that we're squashed, you know, and most of them do, and that's what bothers me about the billionaire class.
Okay,
it's not what they, you know, it's not that they're rich.
Joe, we're going to have to let you go.
Yeah.
We got to take a break for commercials. We've got more callers waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones here to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike? Mike, that guy that called you before, I think it's Tom from Florida, if I'm not mistaken. The last caller.
That was Joe in Tennessee.
Oh, okay, Joe in Tennessee. I'm sorry, but anyway, I agree with a lot of stuff that he's saying. However, I think he, like a lot of people, are getting it wrong on what socialism is and who are the socialists. These billionaires are not socialists by even a stretch of imagination. This is capitalism at its worst. This is extreme capitalism. It's like extreme socialism, I guess, is a very extreme form of communism, like Pol Pot, where you start slaughtering your own population. Okay? This is extreme capitalism, what we're seeing today. This is what I call predatory capitalism. People call it crony capitalism, all kinds of different things. But it's the same thing. It hurts this country. They use certain things like climate change and to help themselves because they know they're going to get parts of this carbon tax. They also are going to get more monopolies because it's going to be harder for businesses to either get started or smaller businesses to stay in business. Okay? And this is what they want to do. They are predators of the worst type. And I'll be honest with you, man. I will take socialism over that. Okay? I will vote. I'm telling you right now. Tulsi is my favorite. If it comes down to Bernie Sanders, if I'm satisfied that he's going to do something about stopping these wars, as well as some of the other socialist programs he wants to get, I'll vote for Sanders. I am tired of this. So tired of it. They are predators. They're bullying everybody around. They're using their money as weapons. I personally think we should have a 95% tax on anybody earning over $1 million a year. Once you get over that million, 95%. And I'd also tax them like 25, 30% of their wealth every year on top of it. We don't need billionaires. They should not be billionaires. It's true. There's no reason for it. For somebody to get that rich, you don't need that much money. And most of that money, I kind of disagree on it. You know, you said there are some good ones. For the most part, these people do not make their money honestly. For the most part, they're doing something to get that money and keep somebody else. That's for the most part. Very few of these people are honest. Look at these hedge fund managers. Most of these billionaires today, I think, are hedge fund. What's his name? Buffett,
Yeah.
Bloomberg, Bloomturd, I call him. And just about you name most of these guys are hedge funders. Okay, Soros himself is a hedge funder. Okay, they don't make their money honestly. They short the system a lot of times. They got all kinds of tricks they get rich on, and then they use that money as weapons. They buy up the politicians. They buy up their votes. They buy this government, and they put us into wars on top of it. Why do them be behind these wars? Because they tend to gain from these wars. Okay, they don't care about the average soldier. They couldn't give it. You know what about it? About our troops? Okay, and our troops are not fighting for this country. They're fighting for these billionaires, for these predators, these bankers, and for these oil companies. Look at what's going on here in Syria right now. All that is all that is a ripoff. Trump is using these troops as rent-a-cops, guard that oil for the Rothschilds, for ExxonMobil. That's an impeachable offense. You want to impeach Trump for something? Impeach him for that. Not this silly nonsense about Ukraine where he's actually in the right. That's an impeachment, but they don't want to impeach him for that because they're all behind it. They're all paid off. A lot of them blackmail. Epstein was an example. I'd say 60% of Congress probably being blackmailed by Epstein. We're being blackmailed by Epstein and the Mossad, CIA on top of it. That's what was happening. I agree. We need to start taking some of this money away from these people, man. Okay? Tax the you-know-what out of them. After a certain time, you don't need to make them. What do you need to make $1 million a year for? You going to tell me? What do you need $1 million a year?
Well, let me back up here a little bit. Let me back up here a little bit. We'll never be able to take the money away from the billionaires. They'll lie, cheat, steal, and kill to hang on to it. What will solve the problem is when the money itself becomes worthless. At that point, we hit the reset button and we start over.
I'm sorry. I think we can stop, Mike. You have to have somebody forceful enough. Putin did a good job when he took over. Russia would be a dead country right now. They probably would have broken up into little pieces had he not done what he did. He put a bunch of them in jail. Putin had an advantage
in that the Soviet Union had already collapsed. Anyway, listen, Mark, we got to let you go. Got to take another break for commercials. We got more callers waiting on the line, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go right back to the telephones to Steve Elkins. And Steve, before I let you go on your rant, I just want to remind all of our listeners that Steve Elkins will be taking the microphone for John Stadmiller immediately following our program here. So, Steve, what's on your mind?
Well, your caller, the last caller, is demonizing money that $1 million and 95% tax beyond $1 million. Where's my incentive as an entrepreneur to grow and get more wealth and hopefully expand my business to include more employment for little guys? Where's my incentive? And I disagree with him. He doesn't quite get the idea. Yes, we have millionaires, and they aren't the threat. The billionaires, some are good, some are bad, as you stated. I'm angry about those billionaires that ended up owning sports teams and having the city buy them or build them a new stadium, of which they reap all the profits. Maybe a little bit of the industry of hotels, and maybe some of the restaurants profit from it. But down here in Florida, Disney is so profitable, and I'm not sure how it is because they're so expensive to get tickets to go to Disney. But evidently, it is still profitable that they do share the wealth with the community in saying no state tax. So if I'm going to be subjected to being squeezed for more taxes for all these projects to benefit the billionaires, then where's my benefit? I don't get a ticket for the game. I don't get, there's a state tax. Maybe they should think about, somebody should be pushing the issue of saying, you know what, if you help these billionaires, then you need a benefit also. Why not have no state tax in a state that has all these big sports teams and all these big arenas that are built by the taxpayers of cities? We should be getting something for it, and we're not. That's my big gripe.
Well, I'm absolutely in agreement with you, and of course, I'm not a big sports fan for any sport. I don't like sitting and paying money to watch other people have fun. But you're absolutely right. The billionaires will simply spread enough of their money around to the local politicians, where the local politicians will say, "Yeah, sure, we'll build you a stadium," and inevitably, there's always going to be an outcry from the general population that gets ignored.
Yeah, but I just can't see demonize that last caller demonizing somebody who makes $1 million and after $1 million, 95% tax. That's crazy. I may want to grow my business. I may want to add more factories, more manufacturing, if that's even possible in this country. But I may want to, expand and then, of course, bring more people in. So I need to do that. And if you tax me at 95% beyond the first $1 million, well, how am I going to grow my business to include more employees? It's not going to be possible. He's barking up the wrong tree on this one.
I think what we're talking about is, taxable income, where if you're spending the money that your company generates to create more employment and everything, that does not come under the heading of taxable revenue.
Well, like I said, he's kind of demonized the incentive to advance yourself and to do better. I mean, if we set the bar low and said, well, I'm just comfortable, I'm happy, I don't have that much, but I'm happy living comfortable at this level. I mean, will society really benefit? Will the economy grow? Will we be better as a people, in a nation? I mean, if we don't have people who want to grow and extend that wealth out for people like me to have a job or anybody to have a job. He's kind of demonized the money issue, and I think he's kind of off on that one, big time.
Well, where he's slightly off, of course, is that the way this country was first set up, it was the function of government to act as a mediator between the greed of the wealthy and the needs of the general public. Unfortunately, our government has basically gone over to the other side.
Right. That's it for me, Mike. See you in a couple hours.
All right, and we're going to switch over to Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Good day to you. I think Steve was right on point about what he's saying. There's some good billionaires and there's some bad billionaires. He was right on point with that, and he does live in a great state of Florida. And as Steve well knows, if we'd have got a Democrat, communist, Bolshevik like Gillum in here, we'd be trying to pump state tax on the Florida citizenry, and it'd be a disaster. We'd end up like New Jersey, New York, where we know some people live. And speaking of that, Michael, what's going on in Texas is another disgrace. All these Californians are moving into Texas, and that's what they're doing. I think there's a modus operandi by these demon rats to flood these states that are not blue yet, like Virginia, what they did there. They try to do it in Florida, but people here woke up. Texas, I know they're going to wake up because the Californians are trying to destroy Texas. The New Yorkers and the New Jerseyans are coming down. They're coming down to Florida. They're trying to take over the Carolinas. It's a disgrace what these Bolshevik demon rats are trying to do, and it's all a plot, a big plan by them to do that. And going on that avenue, yesterday I was watching the Trump rally. I know people don't want to hear that, but they had this thing about this guy that in 2017, his name is Said. You have Schiff and Said. They're two Zionists. This guy Said, S-A-I-D, Said, I think his name is Jeffrey Said. This guy's basically saying we're going to do a coup on Trump. Now, if that was reversed, it was a Republican doing that to a Democrat president, it would be smattered all over the news for the next 20 years. It would never be laid down for 24 hours a day. But these Bolsheviks that are running the media are going after Trump. They're literally saying they're going to put a coup on the president of the United States. I don't know what power Trump really has. But why aren't these people being arrested? Why hasn't these people Dustin's agreeing, and I agree with him. Hey, these people running these sanctuary cities need to be arrested, Michael. They need to be arrested. They have committed utter treason against the United States. And by the way, Michael, on 3 major networks today, you know what they said, all of them? They said there's over 50 million people in this country of ours, the United States of America, do not speak English. They rather speak another language. Over 50 million. That is insanity. Now, Now, that is not something that Teddy Roosevelt wanted.
Nope.
Or any other president before him. Now, if we continue on this road, we will be like Yugoslavia, Bosnia, whatever it was when Clinton was in there. And you know, I mean, if we cannot afford this. This cannot continue on. And this is a big modus of operandi by guys like George Soros and all these Bolsheviks that are running the New World Order. And you had this imbecile Bush was trying to pump Common Core on us. Hey, he said, you ever speak Spanish and English in my household? Well, I think, like I told your show in the past, Jeb, take your butt down there where you belong. Because you don't belong here in Florida. Well, that's what you're trying to do here. He's promoting that here. And we don't need this Bolshevikism of our country. It has to stop and cease. And now, by the way, you had 3 senators today that were on the news, and they're all 3 of them now are saying that we need to put the military on the border, put battalions on the border. Okay? I don't know if you heard that story, but there's 3 of them now that are up and said they want to put battalions of troops on our border, put army bases down there 5 miles off the base, and build like you're doing. You practice Desert Storm activities on that border. I think that's a great idea.
I agree.
If you want to put that wall if you want to put the wall that Jerome Corsi's been talking about, and he showed the video of it. I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet, Michael, but it seems to be very effective. That wall the military is using in Afghanistan right now is a very effective border. And by the way, if we're pumping in 60% of Israelis' defense funding, United States taxpayers, why don't we get their technology and put it on our border? Or why don't we bring some Israelis over here to show us how to build it? But evidently he's working over in Israel. I mean, come on. This is ridiculous. And now, you know, they're talking about the new, I think it's called the 786 F-35. Have you seen the new plane? They're going to build 438 of them. 448 of them, I think it was.
Yeah.
Lockheed Martin. Did you see a video of that today? I mean, it's an amazing plane. There's no question about it. And they asked this guy on the morning, is this the last, going to be the last man flights of a fighter plane, or are they going to use drones? And the guy was like tongue-tied. And I'm like, wait a minute. You know, they're talking about now using robots to fly these planes, or whatever they're going to use. I mean, I guess that is the future of combat. You know, on the ground, in the air, and maybe 100 years, you're probably going to use it's going to be like R2-D2 or something. I don't know, Michael. Who knows what the technology is going to lead to that if we can get to that point. But like right now, what's going on with our country with this invasion, I don't care. Well, OAN has showed the figures. It's over 1 million illegals been snuck in this country in the last year, Michael. Over 1 million. That changed electoral colleges big time. That changed. Look, New York, New Jersey are goners. Virginia's a goner, like the guy calling out for me. California's a goner. If they don't wake up now, we are looking at potential absolute disaster in this nation if we do not stop this immigration. And these people are coming here not even wanting to speak the English language. They don't even really want to fly our flag. They could care less about the founding fathers and their ideology. No, this has got to stop and desist. People have got to be arrested. This guy said that was supposedly a whistleblower. This guy, or the guy that was working with him, this guy said, this guy's a rat, telling writing a letter saying we are going to do a coup against the president of the United States 2 years ago. No, Michael, this cannot. People have got to go to jail. Epstein, Weinstein, all these schmucks getting away with utter murder. And that Jeffrey Epstein, how are you going to allow a guy to get beat to death and you don't know where's the pictures of his body? That pictures of Osama bin Laden. Where's the pictures of this guy Epstein? Where are they? Why did Mitt Romney buy the picture from the guy that had Obama with Louis Farrakhan? I would have turned the election for him in his favor that night of 2012. What was it, November 8th of 2012, if Mitt Romney had got that picture 3 weeks before the election. The course of history would have been changed right there. Because a lot of people would not have voted for Obama. There's no question about it. Him and having a picture of Mad Maxine Waters, who's the other one, Reverend Jeremiah Wright. You had Louis Farrakhan. They're all hugging each other, smiling with Obama. Then you have Obama on a hot mic telling Medvedev when I get elected again. Well, you talk about a quid pro quo. Give me a break. And Biden's telling Biden and his son are getting away with utter murder. This guy made hundreds of millions of dollars. Biden's imbecile son who got kicked out of the Navy. That was kicked out of the Navy, man, with an honorable discharge. How does that happen? How is this happening? This is madness. It's utter sheer madness what's going on. Yeah, and I hear guys calling your show, I'm not going to vote. Hey, look, what's the alternative? You know, that's millions of men went up on the battlefield, guys up there in the Northeast. There were millions of guys went to the battlefield so you have the right to vote. What do you think they went to war for? For their health? They went to war so you had freedom and so you could have elected officials and you could vote properly. Not to sit home and say, I'm not going to vote for this guy. This guy's no good. I'm not going to vote for any of them. Well, you know what? Millions of men would have known that. They would have never went to battle. We would have lost all the wars. World War I, World War II would have been lost. That's why they mainly went to battle, so they had a free country. They had freedom of speech, and they had a right to vote to put the leaders that they wanted in there. Not now everybody goes, I'm not going to vote for him. Like I said, Michael, you live in the state of Hawaii. Your vote over there really didn't count. Dustin's vote didn't count in Jersey, and the other guy's vote didn't count in New York. We can't allow these other states to go blue because we're going to utterly have a civil war in this country. And it could be, I don't know how it's going to go down as a civil war. It's going to be emotionally. It looks like it's given away by the ultimate arbitrator, Michael. The ultimate arbitrator. Hopefully the ultimate arbitrator is a pen, but actually it's not. The ultimate arbitrator is a sword. That's what, our country's falling on the sword right now. Our country's falling on the sword. You got this Ignacio-Cortez pig out there. You got Pelosi with sanctuary cities, homelessness everywhere. It's utter insanity. And it's got to stop. And somebody's got to stop it. I know Trump is not doing what he should do. He should start acting as the commander-in-chief of the Allied forces and the commander-in-chief of the United States and our allies. Hey, listen, stop this nonsense. I mean, he's not the commander of the Allied forces. That was he would put somebody into charge of that. But he's the commander of the United States military, and he needs to stop this. I'm sorry about that. I got a little rant. So I'm a little upset with seeing all this nonsense. And then you got Hollywood is so leftist. If one guy like, can I mention the name Hollywood actor, or I'll get in trouble for that, Michael? Can I say the guy's name?
Mention the name.
Okay, if John Voight, this guy won an Oscar, I believe, back in the 70s for, I think it was Midnight Cowboy.
Yes.
This guy's he's a pro-Republican. This guy now is blackballed from Hollywood because he wants to be conservative. John Wayne or Charlton Heston. These guys are wonderful actors. And if they say anything now, even like Marlon Brando, they're labeled racist pigs or kooks. And who's the real kooks here? The kooks, you have Weinstein, Epstein, all these freak shows, Slick Willie Clinton. It's unbelievable. And like I told you yesterday, a white man can't even run for office in the Democratic Party if he has a little user to the center or right. He's considered a religious fanatic or a kook. It's crazy, and it's got to stop. Somebody's got to come down and really stop this. Something's going to have to happen big time because you have 3 senators right now that Republicans are saying, telling Trump, basically getting in his ear and saying, listen, put the troops down on that border. Defend that border at all costs like you do Syria, like you do Afghanistan, Pakistan. Pakistan's got, well, I don't know about Pakistan, but they got Iraq. We got our troops everywhere. Everywhere.
Yes.
And, Michael, I got to say this, you had a caller call in from Japan the other day. And, I saw the trailer now for this movie that's coming out Midway. I don't know if you had a chance to see the trailer for Midway. It looks like it's going to be a good movie. It's coming out, I believe, next week.
Yes.
And basically, I can remember what my father had told me about Japan because he was stationed over there. And you got to realize they're a homogenous society. I believe that means they don't let too much immigration in there, correct?
Correct. I mean, there was a time in Japan past where if you were not Japanese and you set foot on Japan, they'd just kill you on the spot.
Thank you. That's correct. That's what I was getting to. Exactly. So, that's my point. So, you don't hear the media say, "Oh, the Japanese are racist and all that." That's their society. That's that's their homeland. That's what they want to protect. Like the Chinese. The Chinese got 1 million. What are the others or something? Are in concentration camps. The Chinese, is it, Michael?
Yes.
And now they're putting them in concentration camps because they're like saying, "No, We're the Chinese. You're not. You're the minority. We're the majority. The majority's going to rule. The majority's supposed to rule.
Well, there needs to be a middle ground on that. Anyway, Tom, we got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to our show here. And apparently, Chance in West Virginia wanted to reply to Tom, and we are trying to enforce the rule, one call per caller per day. But let's go ahead and put Chance up on the mixer here. And Chance, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Mike. I really like Tom's call. I admire his spunk, and he's very good with current events. But he made the comment about the wars, about these men dying for our freedoms. If you look in history, these were all bankers' wars. Our freedoms were taken away by traitors from within. So in other words, all those poor men that lay in their graves from all these wars fought for the bankers. They didn't fight for us. They didn't know. They didn't know any better.
Right.
That's what he should research. But I'm not criticizing him. Like I said, I like his calls. I really do. He's very good with current events. But as far as these wars go, not one single soldier died for our freedoms. That's what they've been telling us. It's all a lie. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean they're not heroes, but they were used. Like I said, our freedoms were taken away by traitors from within this country, especially since 1913. I just wanted to make that point, Mike, okay?
Okay. All right, so thank you.
Thank you now.
We're going to let you go here. Okay, coming up here on the top of the hour, and let's talk about, we had already started with the economic news here. The situation with China is getting volatile in the extreme, and apparently U.S. futures jumped to a record high after China says U.S. agreed to roll back tariffs, which sounds really good until you look at the recent history of what appear to be mistranslations based on wishful thinking. And we already had an incident earlier in this week where the U.S. stock market went to record high over claims that a deal had been reached with China, and then China came back and said, no, there is no deal. That's a fairy tale. So see what happens with that one. Now, after years of pumping financial support into dying companies, China has adopted a new policy, which is to let bad companies fail. I think is very healthy. Stop propping them up, let them collapse and make way for companies that do things a little more smartly, if you will. But Hong Kong business activity has fallen at the fastest pace in 21 years. Over in Germany, everybody's talking about the Deutsche Bank death watch. It seems they are in trouble and they cannot get out of it. And observers are saying that if, in fact, Deutsche Bank does collapse, it'll be far worse than the Lehman Brothers collapse back in 2008. Poor Boeing. They just cannot seem to catch a break. Apparently, 3 Ryan airplanes are grounded after cracks between the wings and the fuselage were discovered in its huge Boeing 737 fleet. Dozens of these aircraft have now been grounded around the world. Okay, we're going to be right back after station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And apparently, Costco is jumping into the lucrative prescription drug 1-hour delivery market, which again illustrates how every retailer in America is now being driven by big pharma profits. Okay, apparently down on that Mexico border, the Texas National Guard deployment will end next week. A portion of wall has been built, but certainly far from the complete thing here. Alrighty, over in Germany, far-left Antifa extremists broke into the apartment of a real estate company employee and viciously beat her in an ongoing war against a luxury apartment development in Leipzig. What that has to do with being opposed to fascism or anything, I don't know. They act like the brown shirts. You, Antifa, go beat up this person. We were talking about this massacre, if you will, of Mormons in Mexico. And apparently they've arrested a suspect. And apparently they caught him literally with hostages in his car. And they found this guy in the town of Agua Prieta, which borders Arizona, was in possession of 4 assault rifles, ammunition, and several large vehicles, including a bulletproofed SUV. Now, here's where it gets kind of interesting, because apparently one of the relatives of the dead Mormons said this was all about an argument over smuggling routes. And if you know anything about the way drug cartels are protective of their smuggling routes, then all of a sudden it puts it in a whole different context here. Now, the U.S. press has been horrified by Trump's shoot migrants in the legs, and we're horrified that Trump wanted to have U.S. forces at the U.S.-Mexico border charge migrants with bayonets or shoot them in the legs, and everybody went, how could you do that? Well, why don't you look at what the Israeli snipers are doing to the Palestinian protesters? What do? They shoot them in the legs. No big deal there. They're just Palestinians. Who cares? Over at Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton is saying there's a huge scandal developing there. Testimony by Obama ambassador confirms she directed embassy staff to monitor American social media on the Biden-Soros-Ukraine scandal. Being spied on yet again here. Apparently, the war on American history continues. And out in California, Port Angeles, actually in Washington State, the leftist mayor, Cece Brooke, is calling for the removal of a silhouette featuring armed U.S. soldiers that adorns a fence that has been built to protect a Liberty Bell replica in the city's Veterans Memorial Park. Now, the fence is new, and it was approved earlier this year by the city government and was paid for using private donations. And the mayor is saying, tear it down, tear it down. We can't have Americans seeing Americans, standing up for liberty and the rest of that. Over at the University of Warwick, they have erected a Lenin wall with the famous LIHKG icon, Lie Pig. Now, Lie Pig has now been torn down by campus security because some mainland Chinese students complained the pig is racist. You know the old wisdom about you can't please everybody. Why bother trying? Now, earlier in the week, we were talking about this high school teacher who was accused of having sex with a student 46 years her junior. And apparently, rather than be arrested, she and her husband barricaded themselves in their home and were killed in a SWAT-style raid. All right, over at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, they've had a bit of a court victory in which individuals can force the government to purge records of their First Amendment activities. This was a case called Gams versus FBI. The United States Court of Appeal for the Ninth Circuit ordered the FBI to expunge a 2004 memo it created that documented the political expression of news website antiwar.com and 2 journalists who founded and ran it. The Ninth Circuit required the FBI to destroy the record because it violated the Privacy Act of 1974, which is a federal law that supposedly includes a proviso prohibiting federal agencies from maintaining records on individuals that document their First Amendment activity. None of the government's business what you're doing under the First Amendment. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Yesterday in our third hour, Dave from Crucial Nonsense and I were talking about planned obsolescence and so forth. And apparently, Netflix will stop working on older Samsung smart TVs next month. And they're saying the change is due to technical limitations, and you really should upgrade to compatible equipment. Well, we don't have a Netflix account, and I wasn't thinking about getting one anyway, so it doesn't really affect us. But it's another example. You get something, you get it up and you get it running and it's working fine, and all of a sudden there's a change. Oh, we're sorry, you know, we're going to change this, and you're going to have to either buy an adapter or a whole new TV. Speaking of Netflix, there is a scam alert out. There's an email tries to steal your username and password. And basically the email tells Netflix users their account has been put on hold. It says, we're having some trouble with your current billing information. We'll try again, but in the meantime, you may want to update your payment details. Users are then urged to update their account via a link embedded in the email, which leads to a website that looks almost identical to the official Netflix sign-in page. And we're seeing a lot of these, not just with Netflix. Your social security number is going to be disconnected. Your social security number has been detected being used for criminal activity. We're having to shut down your email box because of perceived bad behavior. Just log in here and update your account and all will be well. I got to tell you, some days it just feels like I get more scam email on my smartphone than legitimate traffic. And getting back on over to Tesla, another little bit of an embarrassment. Nobody died, fortunately. But, you know, they have this driverless Tesla that you can now summon using a smartphone app. And somebody got this on video where a smart summoned driverless Tesla model went down the wrong side of the road. Little bit of a whoopsie there. And another little whoopsie, and a reason why I'll never have one of these in my home. Amazon's Ring Video Doorbell allows attackers to steal your Wi-Fi password, at which point they could launch a variety of cyber attacks using MITM against other devices connected to the same network. Okay, story out of 12160. Man pleads guilty to stalking and controlling ex-girlfriend's car with his computer. I want to step back to this Ring doorbell situation because there is something that most people can do. They don't. Yes, you have your password, but also if you go into your Wi-Fi router, there's a place where you can literally set up a filter that filters by the IP of the allowed device. Set that up and you have all the appropriate IPs in there, even somebody with your Wi-Fi password, but working from a device that's not on the approved IP list, they're not going to get through. Security thing here. Apple has rolled out yet another update, fixes an app-killing bug. And David is saying some have a MAC address hardware filter. Yes, there's that as well. I mean, you should use whatever's out there to keep your system secure. So, anyway, Apple's rolled out another update. Just can't seem to get it right. All right, Google has killed its Daydream project. And as a result, they have decided to place the software for their cardboard virtual reality into open source. They're making the code available for developers. And it's basically the building blocks to making a cardboard VR application. Now, if you don't know what I mean by that, the cardboard VR is a set of cardboard goggles that will hold your smartphone horizontally in front of your eyes, and the software will split screen it so that you have left and right views. And of course, it's not as good as some of the dedicated VR goggles, but it's fun to play with a little bit here. Now, Elon Musk is backing an AI company that has just released its text-generating robot. And apparently this robot is capable of taking a snippet of text and extrapolating that small piece of information into a much larger document. And apparently somebody fed a phony headline into this AI, and the bot was able to produce a fairly convincing fake news story based on the prompt. I can just see the prostitutes and the correspondents out there saying, how dare you build a robot that lies to the public? That's my job, gosh darn it. Okay, Facebook has now done a flip-flop. They're going to revise their political ad policy after Hillary warns that Zuckerberg should pay a price. Now, Twitter banned all political advertising. Facebook said, we're going to continue to accept political ads, and we don't care if they're verified or not. We're not in the business of verifying what our advertisers say. Of course, Facebook is in the business of silencing anybody who says something they don't like. Facebook says they're going to basically revise their policy and that they will, in fact, try and impose filters that will look out for political lies. The irony here, of course, is that politicians have long held that the First Amendment protects their right to lie to you. That is considered protected political speech under the First Amendment. Well, I disagree with that. The First Amendment was created to protect the truth, not the lies. Anyway, apparently Facebook fought to keep a trove of 4,000 pages of confidential internal memos, and they've now been made public. Somebody got hold of it, put it on out on the web. Investigative reporter Duncan Campbell released a vast swath of internal emails, reports, and other documents from the early 2010s that detail Facebook's internal approach to privacy and how it worked with app developers and handled their access to user data. Now, the documents were originally compiled as part of a lawsuit that the startup 643 brought against Facebook for cutting off its bikini photo apps access to the developer's platform. The documents were supposed to remain under seal, but they got leaked. Let's hear it for the leakers. If it weren't for the leakers, we wouldn't be getting any news. 2 former Twitter employees have been arrested and charged with spying for Saudi Arabia, and they're saying they may have even been involved in the Khashoggi murder. And the complaint was unsealed yesterday in San Francisco, and it detailed a coordinated effort by Saudi officials to recruit employees at Twitter, look into the private lives of thousands of Twitter accounts. Alrighty, getting into science and health. A new study published at the beginning of the week found that more parents are claiming that due to their religious beliefs, their children should be exempt from vaccinations. As you know, states are passing all these laws saying parents don't have a right to refuse. No matter how damaging vaccines turn out to be, they don't have a right to refuse. Well, some of these laws still allow for what's called the religious exemption. I imagine those are going to start being knocked down real quick because, you know, after all, it's money. Getting these kids to take these 30 vaccines, most of which are based on patents owned by CDC, it's a huge revenue stream. We're talking billions of dollars every year. Up in Canada, Health Minister Christine Elliott made an appearance at a Rexall drugstore in Ontario where she claims to have gotten her free flu shot. But examination of the video of her getting the shot shows there wasn't actually a needle in the syringe. proving once again that when it comes to politicians, vaccines for thee, but not for me. Okay. Let's take a quick look. There's been an update on, yeah, they're still screaming about vote fraud over in Kentucky. Okay. All right. This one's a little bit scary. The story came on out of uns.com saying that in the United Kingdom, National Health Service is going to be allowed to deny treatment to sick people if they are deemed to be racist or sexist. Now, this goes so against the Hippocratic Oath. I can't imagine that NHS doctors are going to go along with this, but that's the idea they're pushing. That if you don't espouse the approved points of view, you're going to be they're just going to let you die. That's very scary. Over in Los Angeles, there's been a surge in cases of leprosy. And I'm sure for most of you, you think, oh, I thought that went out with the Dark Ages. Well, it's still around, and the symptoms can be treated, but it's a big problem down in Mexico right now. And because of the open borders, it's now a big problem inside Southern California. And doctors are issuing warnings. Collins University, which is an all-women's college in Roanoke, Virginia, will now admit biological male students who identify as female. Jane Fonda is out there pushing the human-caused global warming agenda, saying we have 11 years until there's a climate catastrophe. So we must mobilize by the millions in the streets to stop it. Now, many years ago at 20th Century Fox, I got to briefly meet and talk with Jane Fonda, and she was much more mellow and calm back then. So I don't know exactly what's happened since then here. Several blasts of Arctic air will bring an early winter to the Northeast. Seeing the same thing over there in the Pacific Northwest. And as I said at the top of the show, they're expecting the first sticky snow of the winter here in Indiana over the weekend. So as you know, the global warming people had to drop the polar bear as their mascot because the populations are actually booming. And now the leftists are claiming penguins are gay and are being killed by climate change. That's just a little bit out there, I think. All right, we're coming up here on a commercial break. And phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And apparently, over at the New York Times, their stock has plunged after the company reports continued declines in advertising. Well, that's going to happen when people stop reading your website or reading your newspaper. In fact, there are some people out there saying that online advertising has turned into a bubble. Got to keep an eye on that one here. And let's see. I'm looking at the results for the Kentucky governor. And there's something really weird here because apparently a lot more people voted for the attorney general than voted for the governor. So something very weird going on over there. Yeah, there's obviously an issue. If you go to the polling place and you're going to vote, you're going to start with those top officials. Okay. Over in Africa, there are these missionary nuns who were working in Africa, who had taken vows of chastity, and two of them have now become pregnant. Catholic Church is out there saying, wonder how that could happen. As you know, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen an increase in seismic volcanic activity pretty much all the way around the globe. And some people are saying it's a cause for concern. Others are saying, no, that it's just part of the normal fluctuation that we see in geological activity. But apparently this last volcanic eruption in Tonga that lasted 18 days created a new 1,300-foot island, wiped out a smaller one completely. I remember when we were having our big eruption over there on the Big Island in Hawaii, and that was quite spectacular. Apparently there was a new controversy having to do with the Roger Stone trial, where the judge has allowed known anti-Trump feds to serve on the jury. I thought the whole point of jury selection was to find a pool of jurors that didn't have a dog in that hunt. In this case, again, we're seeing the court get loaded up. Question that came out of government slaves, it's a good one. The independent media, that's us people, were exposing the Epstein corruption at the same time ABC was covering it all up. So who is the fake news and who is the real news? Now, Joe DiGenova is saying that the IG report will be delayed due to the Durham grand jury. I don't know about you. I'm getting really frustrated about it's coming. The IG report's coming. The FISA report's coming. It's almost here. Look, when you have it, let me know. I'll pay attention. Until then, just shut the heck up, because I'm tired about hearing all this stalling tactics here. All righty. Apparently, Homeland Security will soon have biometric data on nearly 260 million people. The question is, how accurate is it? We're talking before about egregious business practices as the economy tightens up. Apparently, AT&T has been caught switching customers to more expensive plans without asking them first. All of a sudden, your bill goes up and you call on and say, what's going on? They say, oh, well, you've been moved to plan XYZ version 2. I didn't ask for that. We didn't ask you. So, apparently the feds have raided a New York tech firm suspected of selling Chinese equipment to the U.S. military. It's all about the weapons traffic. It's all about the money. All about the money. Apparently, NBC's being called on the carpet for treating the Harvey Weinstein story the same way they treated Jeff Epstein. Say it didn't meet their editorial standards. And again, this is the ultimate hypocrisy. NBC went on air with Saddam's nuclear weapons. They went on air with Saddam's sarin gas. They went on the air with Trump's collusion with Russia. Don't give me this editorial standards. This is outright censorship. This is protecting the golden children, if you will. Tulsi Gabbard was interviewed on Breitbart News and saying that don't have a nation if we do not have borders. And she's absolutely correct on that. Okay, we're coming up here on another commercial break. Please join us on the air, 800-313-9443, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And Adam Schiff has stumbled over his own feet yet again. Apparently, they put up a transcript at docs.house.gov, which neglected to redact the name of their top secret anonymous whistleblower, which we've already known for several days is Eric Ciaramella. And of course, people are digging into this Eric and discovering that he was also part of this whole Russiagate hoax. So right now, Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, they don't really have anything. They're going to try and create the illusion in the mind of the public that Trump is really bad and that anything they do to remove him is therefore justified. And no, it isn't. The Constitution of the United States of America specifies exactly what conditions have to exist for there to be an impeachment. They don't have anything. So apparently landlords are now invading the privacy of their tenants using these smart home devices. And again, not that I have anything to hide, especially at my age. That's why I won't have these devices. If you are a conservative and let's say you have a pickup truck, and let's say that you have stickers on the back that support hunting and Second Amendment rights, patriotic emblems. Apparently, law enforcement is saying gun thieves will now target those vehicles, steal the firearms. So if you're going to have those kind of stickers on your truck, you might want to think about having a gun vault installed in the bed of the truck that's lockable with a really good, strong lock. Alrighty, China has now banned kids from playing online games after 10 p.m. I think that's actually a good idea. There was actually a story that came out earlier in the week about a kid who just played video games for so long he literally dropped dead. And of course, these computer games are literally designed with the help of psychologists to make them addictive, to keep people playing, especially those games where you have to purchase add-ons. That's why you see so many of these ads on TV for this or that game, download now for free. They're not giving anything away for free. What they do is you get into the game and realize you have to have these other expensive add-ons to stand a chance of actually accomplishing anything. That's where they make their money. Apparently over in Great Britain, they're shooting a documentary about the Skripal case. And apparently BBC just grabbed this cul-de-sac to turn it into a set and really didn't inform the residents as to what was actually going on. So they got all upset here. Italy is going to make studying climate change compulsory in schools. Question is, are they going to teach climate change as being part of nature? Or is this just more forced indoctrination of the children that this is all your fault and you will pay carbon taxes and you will buy carbon credits and you will let us control more of your life than we already do here? Okay, here is a little bit of sage advice for those of you who like to take selfies. Now, I don't do selfies. I think it's a symbol of how our culture has become vain. But apparently over at the National Museum of Ancient Art in Lisbon, there was the statue of Saint Michael, and this Italian tourist, Nuno Miguel Rodriguez, climbed up on the statue to take a selfie with it and knocked it over. This is a 400-year-old statue, and they're saying it can't be repaired. It's just shattered that bad. So be respectful. Be respectful. If you're in that selfie generation, just be careful and be respectful. Okay, I mentioned that one here. And apparently, Katie Pavlich is tying ABC's Epstein cover-up to the Clintons and Stephanopoulos. Lou Dobbs is also out there saying the FISA report will be explosive. So they're all trying to tease us with all of these promises about the DOJ report, the IG report, the FISA report. Where are they? When do we get to actually look at this stuff? Apparently, Russia and China are joining forces in the Arctic, and apparently the Arctic is now in play. in the geopolitical spotlight. A lot of oil and gas up there on the abyssal plain, and China is feeling obliged to carve out its own footprint up there. It reminds me of the movie Ice Station Zebra, where the Americans and the Russians actually have a small skirmish near the North Pole. Could really happen here. Alrighty. Another comment about Adam Schiff and how basically he hasn't said anything that's truthful ever since Trump came to power. We already talked about the Netflix scam. And Brian Stelter's take on ABC Epstein's story shows everything that's wrong with journalism and media today. Media isn't here to educate and inform. It's here to control what you're thinking. And it reminds me of that wonderful movie that was made about the life of Edward R. Murrow. And it concludes with his wires and lights in a box. That applies equally well to the modern world of computers and internet. Either we choose to make it something of use. We choose to use this technology to educate and inform and inspire. That's a good thing. And if we fail to do that, it becomes just another content delivery platform, and Republic is lost. Okay. Story over at Investment Watch blog describing Warren's Medicare-for-all is the longest political suicide note in recorded history. And it really is. I mean, it sounds really good. She's pandering to the crowd of people who are chronically ill because of what's in the drugs and what's in the food. But every time somebody comes up and says, how are you going to pay for all of this? She just sort of shrugs and says, well, we'll figure out a way after, after I've won the election and we get Medicare for all, and then we'll figure out how it's going to get paid for. Apparently Bernie Sanders is out there saying it's time to break Facebook up because Facebook is treating user data as a bargaining chip. And that's your data. That's your data that they're talking about here. Story coming on out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain assuring us that we've just experienced our hottest October ever, beating the 2015 record by 0.018 degrees Fahrenheit. They're still pushing it. They're still pushing global warming, global warming, global warming. Even people who live around here, this part of Indiana, are saying it's coming in harder and sooner than normal. All right, everybody likes to point at the electric cars as being the solution to global warming and to pollution. And I would like that to be so, because I'm one of those people who thinks that electric cars are the wave of the future. But it's an unrealized potential, because apparently there are thousands of tons of unprocessed battery waste being dumped by drivers in Great Britain. And right now, the electricity that charges those electric cars are coming from the exact same oil and coal-fired power plants as all the other electricity. Ultimately, I think this is going to work, but there's a long way to go. And we're not seeing the political will to actually make it happen. So apparently, Representative Eric Swalwell is trying to add to the list of Trump's impeachable offenses. And Swalwell is now saying it's an abuse of power to remove an ambassador for political reasons because you don't like what they're doing. Well, the ambassadors and for that matter, so many of the other federal government positions, serve at the pleasure of the president, who has every right to let them go if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Okay, we already talked about the Koreas. Apparently, out in Genesee County, New York, there was this 76-year-old homeowner, heard a knock at the door, and when he went to open the door, an intruder wearing a ski mask put a gun in the homeowner's face, demanded money, ordered him to the room where it turned out the victim's double-barrel shotgun was stored. And that's why you have guns in your home. All right, another story, this one out of Investment Watch blog. Buy gold before Marxism destroys your money. Now, earlier in the show, we were talking with somebody about, what do we do about the billionaires? We have to take the money away from them. They'll never let it go. The only way you will undermine their power is if the money is allowed to become utterly worthless. Then we can hit the reset button and start all over again. Alrighty. Bill Gates isn't so sure about Elizabeth Warren's proposed wealth tax. The wealthy won't be. Oh. Next one. Come on, come on, come on, come on. There we are. There was this Antifa punk who sent a Good Samaritan at the hospital. The judge has thrown the book at him. That's good. Got to start sending a message. This kind of behavior is not acceptable in a civilized country. And what's really alarming to me is how Antifa goes on out and, like they beat up that real estate agent, and the police don't seem to want to do anything about it. And corporate media won't report it. Antifa are still being held up as some kind of counterculture heroes. They're not. They're brown shirts. So, already talked about that one here. CDC has been petitioned to admit they accept corporate money. Of course they accept corporate money. They have all along. Okay, Soros dropped $800,000 to defeat a Republican district attorney, but she won anyway and mocked him in her victory speech. Apparently, what are being described as aggressive animal rights activists targeted a blind man, 30, for keeping a guide dog that they claim should be running free in the fields. They really are nuts. And by the way, many, many years ago, before Claire, before Broadzilla, I was dating a young lady who was a volunteer for guide dogs. And go get a puppy, and we'd house train it and give it some basic lessons. Then we'd turn it back in and get a new puppy, which was kind of a heartbreaking moment to do. But if it wasn't for the need for these guide dogs, they wouldn't be alive in the first place. There's a new survey out that found that the upcoming election is a significant source of stress for 56% of U.S. adults. And I fit into that list. I absolutely, absolutely do. All righty. The Los Angeles Times blamed the U.S. victims in this massacre by the Mexican cartel. That prompted a huge backlash online. So, there's this disabled woman. She's filed a lawsuit against police after body cam footage shows officers tasing her while she was restrained. She's saying, no, wait a minute, not so fast. She looked at us mean. She made stink face at us. Article out of governmentslaves.com. Can crypto revive Swiss banking? Swiss banking's been in trouble, mostly because they're not as secretive and secure as they used to be. Another example of the cops. This is 3 cops enter the home without a warrant and taser the father holding his baby, which means the kid got a jolt as well. They are, in fact, they're out of control. They're absolutely, absolutely out of control. So ABC is basically on a purge, going after the leaker of the bombshell video about Epstein. They think they've identified the source. So, Chelsea Manning whistleblower, bad. ABC whistleblower, bad. The U.S. Army is getting ready to test a high-powered laser cannon that can incinerate drones, planes, helicopters, and missiles. Good luck on that one. I wonder how they solved the thermal blooming problem. Okay, there's the music. We're going to do our last commercial break. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, over at the Google Play Store, they have pulled the app for PragerU. PragerU is this conservative organization. They had their own app, and it was available at the Google Play Store. Google has now taken it down without a word of explanation. So there's literally a war against conservatism in this corporate social media. All right, over the last week, there have been these flyers showing up on certain college campuses saying, it's okay to be white. And people say, yeah, it's okay to be white. The polar bears are saying it's okay to be white. The snowmen are saying it's okay to be white. No big deal. But now there's a new dimension because apparently in the latest seeding over at Western Connecticut State University, there was a second set of flyers saying Islam is right about women. That's going to horrify everybody there. And that's the whole point. This is a classic poison the well psyop. I'll tell you right now, it's a given. Whoever's putting out this Islam is right about women is not the same people saying it's okay to be white. They're trying to blend them together so they can say, oh, yeah, it is a hate crime. Say it's okay to be white. Sneaky. All righty. Apparently, privacy warning detective permitted to override privacy settings of 1.2 million users of DNA site. Really, the entire system is set up as a new system of control over our lives, worse than 1984. George Orwell never even dreamed about anything like this. And again, as a sign of the decline of our civilization here, there's a video where this mother is kicked in the head and beaten unconscious in front of her children at a roller rink by a couple who took her disabled son's skate frame. This couple just said, oh, that's cool, that skate frame, let's go take it. And they beat this mother unconscious. We've lost our civilization. We've become very uncivil. And apparently Elizabeth Warren has been granted immunity from smearing the Covington kids, and the judge has now removed her from the lawsuit. It's good to be politically connected here. Apparently parents are suing a school board for teaching their daughter girls are not real. Really is absurd here. Apparently conservatives are fleeing California for the America First red states. Let glad we got here when we did. Okay, there is the music. It's time for me to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller's show, although Steve Elkins is taking the microphone for this evening, and I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. So spread the word of RBN, spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please continue to support us financially, because we really do need the help. And we'll be back tomorrow, Friday. So aloha, America.